going, guys? I'm Christopher McGee with Halcyon Real Estate. I'm affiliated with Keller Williams office in Salt Lake City. Today is the 3rd of April. It's snowing too much still, and this is the real estate numbers. Every week I'm going over 7 specific numbers, and I report them here to you so that you can be as informed as a well-informed real estate agent on what's going on in our Utah real estate market. Also this week, since we've concluded a quarter, the first quarter of the year, we'll look specifically at that quarter and what the trends seem to be so far, what that might tell us. So let's go ahead and do these numbers. All right, the first number we always do is our inventory. How many current active on the market properties are there right now? We're at 6,420. That's down almost 200 from the previous week, continuing our downward trend, furthering the trend a little bit more dramatically than we have been for the last month. Our second number is what is the average number of days that it takes before a property on the market gets an offer and accepts it, goes under contract. As of last week, that average was 56 days. That's down just 2 days from the previous week, but really, if we look at the last month, really even last quarter, it's come down from a high of like 67 in late January, but for the last month, it's been about where it is now. Our third number is always the difference between two numbers. The first of those two numbers is what last week our average list price was. Last week, our average list price was $608,776, whereas our average sold price was $597,510. That makes the difference between those two numbers, which is the main one we're looking at, $11,266, still in the buyer's favor. Now that's down just a few $100s from where it was. And I say down, meaning closer to zero, closing to net zero. And this is in the negative. It's being sold for less than it's being listed at. The closer we get to zero, more balanced market on average we're seeing. This number has been in the negative difference between the two numbers for quite some time now, coming up on a year. And this first quarter, it did have that freak in the positive at 11,000 more sold than listed at, but really everything's been in the negative and nothing too solid of a trend up to this point. Our fourth number is always the number of properties that were sold in the previous week. That number this week is 579, and that's up significantly, up about 140 from the previous week. Overall, a trend up for this first quarter, to be sure. We had a high point of 807 about a month ago, and then it came back down, but it's still been up and to the right. Our fifth number is the number of properties that are currently under contract, and that number comes to 5,102. That's down about 50 from the previous week, but certainly on an upward trend throughout the quarter. Our sixth number is the number of times that a seller reduced the asking price on their property that's on the market in this last week. That happened 479 times. That's down almost 100 from the previous week, and definitely showing an overall downtrend. It kind of stayed in the mid to high 500s for quite some time, but it did come down from a high of like 700 in February, and that was the high point, about 702 in early February. So showing an overall trend down for sure. And our last number is always the number of listing contracts that have been canceled, expired, or withdrawn from the MLS. That number this week comes to 462, certainly up from last week and up overall over the last month. Looks like an overall downward trend for the quarter. This week's number brought it back up, but certainly not to the high that it was toward the beginning of the quarter. So as has been happening since last Halloween, our inventory continues to come down, and that kind of started to level. I mean, it was still coming down, but it looked like it was leveling out a little bit throughout March. We were only dropping like 50 to 100 in inventory per week throughout March, but we've dropped another 200 as of this first week in April. So inventory cannot continue to drop at this rate without things starting to be really in the seller's favor. Our number of average days on market right now, just a little bit under 2 months. That's, if anything, in the seller's favor. I know it doesn't seem like it when a couple of years ago you could put a for sale sign in your yard as a seller and expect it to go under contract over the weekend. But 2 years ago the market was insane, and that's not sustainable, and that's not what a typical seller's market looks like. That's already sitting in the seller's favor for what's typical for a seller's market. Our number sold per week is going up, and as the number sold comes up, obviously, unless we're putting more inventory in than we're taking out from the market, market, then that will continue to drop our inventory again in the seller's favor. Our number of properties that are under contract at any given time has been steadily coming up, and that will be in the seller's favor because the more properties you have under contract at any given time obviously leads to more things being sold from week to week. Price reductions coming down is obviously in the seller's favor, and the number of canceled, expired, and withdrawn listings just tells us how many people are fed up with trying to sell. The higher that number goes, the less that is in the seller's favor. So the only thing not clearly in the seller's favor here, the only thing clearly still in the buyer's favor of all these numbers we look at is certainly the difference between the average list price and the average sold price. Spring is here. I mean, it's snowing today, but spring is technically here. And so with April landing and then May and June, we always see an influx of buyers. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like this year. Interest rates are historically average to good. In context of the last 3-4 years, interest rates are not our favorite, obviously. That's discouraging a lot of buyers, but people still need to move. And a lot of people decide to move in the spring. And so where interest rates have been holding things back for the seller because fewer buyers want to buy with the interest rates where they are, this difference between average list price and average sold price, it has to give. And I'm interested in seeing how that plays out in the second quarter as we move into April. And that's it. That's the numbers today and the numbers and what they've looked like throughout the first quarter of this year. If you have any questions about anything that we've gone over today, feel free to hit me in the comments. If you or anyone you know is looking to move in the coming months this year, I'd be happy to help. Of course, you can reach out to me on my cell. You can call or text me at 801-834-9713. And of course, if it's better for you, you can email me at christopher.mcgee@kw.com. And of course, as always, if you want to remain better educated on the Utah real estate market than anybody else you know, go ahead and just hit that subscribe. We'll do this every week and finish these videos a little bit better educated than when you started. Hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you next week.